Welcome to SHOWstudio's live panel discussions. So in these discussions, experts from all over the industry discuss and debate the most important Fashion Week shows of the season. So today we're in the midst of Paris Fashion Week, and we're going to be discussing MUGLER. And I'm really excited to have such an amazing panel with me here today. First of all, just to introduce myself, I'm Nathalie Khan. I teach fashion history and theory at Central St. Martin's and at La Cambre in Brussels. And I've got an amazing panel with me today. And we just had a little chat outside, and I'm just so glad that you're all here together. It feels like a really special moment. So I'm really excited to share MUGLER and your thoughts on the heritage of the brand and also, of course, what is happening now. But before we start off, I'd like you to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Akuac, Thiep. I'm 24 and I hail from Hackney, East London. I'm a model and I'm signed to Nevs.
Hi, I'm Lily Bling and I'm a stylist and consultant.
Hi, I'm Freegard. I take pictures and procrastinate.
Hi, my name is Nicola Pozzani. I am in-house bespoke perfumer for Florist London and fragrance educator at London College of Fashion.
Hi, I'm Jenna Rossi Camus. I'm a fashion curator and historian, and I'm also a lecturer at London College of Fashion and the Royal College of Art.
So I wasn't joking that this is an amazing panel. So before we kick off and look at the show, which we just had a quick look at, it only happened today, I wanted to talk to you guys about the heritage and the idea of MUGLER, and I think also the reason I think we all decided to do this panel today. I've heard from the team that this was a really popular panel, that there are a lot of people wanted to talk about MUGLER, and I think what it is that draws you to the house, what still connects you and your practice or your interest to the brand and its history. Who wants to go first?
It's the glamour.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the old glamour. It's probably Jerry Hall is the reason we're all here.
Yeah.
Cheers, Jerry.
No, I agree. I second that. It's the glamour. That's why I like MUGLER. That's probably why you like MUGLER.
Indeed.
It's the glamour and the drama.
Yeah.
And the art behind it, and the passion.
Yeah.
And the drive.
And that glamour comes from the shows, comes from the images, comes from the way, the way that the body was dressed in these amazing creations. And I think also how it was performed in the shows. The shows were such an important part of sort of the MUGLER history. So we have some images here as well. I think the shows also set a precedent. I've written about shows in the past, and I've always gone back to MUGLER because I think that his shows influenced what happened later in the 90s. It's that drama that you described. It's this sort of fearless, sort of the idea of the diva, and I think this idea of sort of what old glamour is maybe as well. Gemma, what do you think about?
Well, I think that what's really interesting about how MUGLER really took over visual culture at that moment, and obviously we will probably talk about Too Funky, and that this was a time in the early 90s when actually there weren't fashion shows on television all the time, so lots of people got introduced to MUGLER even if they weren't necessarily involved in fashion, so that glamour and that theatricality transcended just the fashion industry and really became part of visual culture and pop culture at large.
The connection between pop culture and fashion, I think also MUGLER is probably the main reference here. That really didn't happen before. His shows were public events. People had to pay to see them. I think that's also really interesting. And there was this draw of something that was completely over the top and sort of challenging and pushing boundaries and what was acceptable in fashion. And that was achieved through that sort of the extraordinary performance that you saw on the runway. And yes, you've mentioned it, Gemma. I think that's really interesting to come back to that link between pop culture and George Michael and Too Funky, that video. So there were two versions of that video, and it was directed by MUGLER. So MUGLER was not just a designer, he was also a perfumier, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and he was a director. So he directed this video, and famously there's a lot of myth and stories around this this video, that they fell out and they couldn't agree about two versions and how the runway show was represented. For Mugler and what he wanted to show a darker side of fashion, and I think that runs through the oeuvre of sort of the Terry Mugler brand at that time, and he wanted to show what was happening behind the runway. Whereas for George Michael, he wanted it just to look glamorous, and I think that's where they fell out. So I think that's also a really interesting story around that video. And what you are saying, Gemma, I think also reminds me of sort of that clash between celebrity culture and the old glamour, you know, the Hollywood glamour that we see in these images and how the brand portrayed itself. So maybe that video marks a turning point where sort of old glamour and celebrity culture clashed, and you had to preserve that image of the superstar model.
I think it also does read very much as a parody, and it's also a parody of George Michael's earlier videos in which models were celebrities and larger than life. And I think in both the director's cut, which does have the behind the scenes, and the official version, we can read it very much as something that's self-ironizing. So I think I'm quite interested in, to the degree to which the larger-than-life glamour is also funny, and it's very much a character, and it's something that's seen with, a wink and quite tongue-in-cheek.
What do you guys think about humour in fashion?
Love it. Yeah. I think Mugler was always so conscious of the glamour, conscious of what fashion is, and he wasn't taking it so seriously. And if it was taken seriously, it was taken so ultra-seriously that everyone else found it funny, at least. At least I do.
And I guess that's missing from fashion now, this kind of lightheartedness and the ability to not take it so seriously. And he was obviously an expert at that.
I think it was so great how the models really brought the designs to life, because they were actually performing, so performing art.
Yes.
I thought that's really changed in today's runways these days.
That's so interesting that you say that. I think that's also something that I wanted to ask you to... I think a lot about sort of what it means to walk in a show, or what it likes, to be a model on the runway. And do you think that when you walk, do you create a character? Is that still something that goes on, or how do designers prepare you for that moment when you step
Well, every designer is quite different, so I guess you're kind of fulfilling their vision, and most of the time you're just wearing the clothes to kind of showcase it, but I feel maybe it's missing the beauty of actually becoming a whole character.
Yes.
And performing and, really engaging with the audience. But there are I've walked in some shows before where it is quite performative. I've walked in a show from Wendy Goddard.
Yes.
And it was about kind of almost like a dancing kind of raver situation where we walk down the runway, but we come back and we dance all together.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was really embodying what I was meant to be wearing.
Yeah. So that's a completely different approach.
Completely, but it's definitely lost these days.
Yeah.
I'd say it happens a lot less now than it would have back then. If you look back, you've got Mugler, even Zandra Rhodes, when she was doing her shows, and she would have 3 people come out, and then one would come forward, and then 12, and then walk back. There was actual choreography.
Yeah.
And now I would say that most designers just generally want the model to just walk with a blank expression on their face and no personality.
Yeah, because it must have been so fun to really engage, so much more fulfilling for the designer and the model as well.
We have some images coming up from the show at the moment. Thinking about, before we go and look at those more closely, when I did research yesterday, and one of the things that you do, you put a brand name into Google and you see what comes up. The first thing that came up is Angel and the brand and the perfume. So one of the sort of things that I would like to explore today is also the lasting influence of that brand, of that sort of image of Angel, of the scent itself. And of course, I'm going to ask Nicola about this, and I'm so excited that you're here today, because there's nothing you don't know about perfume. So.
You're too kind. Well, thanks for your invite. It was actually very interesting to hear what you've just commented on about Mugler, which is the fashion side, coming from the perfumery side. But I can very much see exactly the same thing you're talking about. So you talk about humour, for example, and that very much reflects in in the fragrance. They've produced quite a number of fragrances, but this, of course, is the most famous. They've created an icon.
Yeah.
An icon that was made in 1992, but more than ever is relevant, and it actually invented a new genre. And that is that of so-called dessert-like perfumes, sweet perfumes.
Yes.
We call it in the industry gourmand, which is a French word that means fond of good food.
And is it true that it's the first gourmand perfume?
Well, there would have been influences, before that, but Angel is definitely the fragrance that set the new trend for gourmand, which is something that never went out of fashion. So still at this day and age, we are being influenced by this 1992 masterpiece, which is a masterpiece. You may like it or not. In fact, that's also what I absolutely love about Angel. It's a polarizer.
Yes, yes.
And I think just like the fashion, right? So it's about making a statement.
But it's in the smell. So it polarizes people because some people find it not to their taste, let's say, or it's too strong, or it's too sweet.
Yes, it's incredibly powerful. It's an incredibly strong perfume.
It's quite dominating as well. So when you wear it, you know it.
Yes, absolutely. So it's one of those very iconic perfumes. If you think about other things like from the 80s, Poison from Dior, for example, that you notice. But that was the intention, because Thierry Mugler himself was very much behind the creation of the whole thing, the bottle, the juice. So his signature is very much there. So it's a beautiful example to see how much fragrance can translate the designer's aesthetics and personality.
I definitely agree with that as well. And it's like, because the perfume's like meant to be quite sweet, but the advertising for it again is still really strong, and it keeps the whole the silhouette of the woman is very present in his advertising. So having a strong woman is definitely the forefront of his view.
Absolutely, and that's
even
also
in Alien too.
It's not still in Alien as well. It's not still tailoring, and then the references, of course, to Hollywood cinema and that glamour, and the corset, of course, is also central to what he does. And of course, that brings me back to also couture, and especially what happens after the launch of the perfume in '92. Thierry Mugler started working with Mr. Pearl and his team in London, and absolutely sort of pushed the limits. So we have an image that would have been made by Mr. Pearl and his team, and pushed the limits of what is physically possible. So this is embroidery that took hours and hours to make in a very short amount of time, and people went mad making these pieces. I mean, literally went crazy, starting walking the streets because they didn't know where they were anymore, because the pressure was so high on finishing them to that absolute standard. Which I think is also really interesting. In the 90s, often when we think of that decade, we think of, sort of realism, grunge, and a different kind of style. But this continued to be so influential. And it was financed by the perfume. That made it possible. And I think that's something that, we sometimes forget.
Yeah, it's always the case, isn't it?
Now, also, I wanted to come back to this idea of humour and celebrity culture and camp, the exhibition that was or still I think is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and some of the sort of celebrities that are associated with the house now, but of course there's still a really strong influence. So I think that is almost, I don't know if you think that that's a challenge for the brand, that Thierry Mugler is still so sort of in the minds of people. He's working again, so he created some of those looks that were worn. I think there's the one, if we could have a look at
Kim
that,
Kardashian
by
one.
Kim Kardashian.
I love the comeback that he's having. I think that adds to the intrigue of him. He went away and now he's back, but exclusively for Kim, which is quite confusing. She's got a camp body.
Very.
She does. And she looks like a dripping chicken, I think, which I think is...
Yeah, there were a lot of memes around this one.
Yes, I know.
That is amazing.
Extremely beautiful.
That is great.
It's a gorgeous frock, but I didn't think it embodied the theme that well. I mean, it is camp, but I expect if it's Mugler and he's going to do camp at the Met Gala, then he's going to go all out.
That's not like after 20 years of retirement dress, I was expecting like a real
crazy.
bag. But it's phenomenal.
like compared to Cardi B and then to Kim Kardashian, you thought it'd be more like out there, with Kim K especially.
I mean, this was really interesting because it was on display at the museum, and then she also wore it as well. So to bring it to life,
Didn't they have to cut the gloves because of her nails or something? Because they wouldn't fit. She had
didn't wear any
extensions
nails.
on. Yeah.
Did she?
I think
They
she
did?
had, yeah, I think she had like, nail extensions on, so they had to like have a different glove. It doesn't fully cover her hand.
Ah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she has like a neck glove underneath or something.
Yeah, she does.
Nice.
that's a great invention. Great
Take the
glove.
nails off.
Inside knowledge.
Yeah, like take her nails off.
You would for Mugler though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, come on, whip them off.
Clearly she didn't.
And then Cardi B was also at the first show. So just to make a connection as well here to Casey Cat-Valladay, who took over at Mugler just a few seasons ago. So this is, I think, a really interesting moment. And I think there is a challenge here to go and respond to a house and its amazing archive, which I think is available to him. And he's spoken in an interview at SHOWstudio as well that we published a few weeks ago, I think, where he talks about how the archive inspires him, how he goes back to the codes of the house to create something that sort of responds to his training and his interests. So he is an architect by training, and he's interested in textures, materials,
You
but
can
also...
totally tell he's an architect.
I know.
Yeah.
What
So
is it with
boring.
architects?
I'm sure he's got those rimless glasses as well.
Architect shoes are the worst, though.
Scam day. I don't get how it's from the codes of the house. I don't see the connection
Yeah, I
there
don't
at
see
all.
any connection at all.
Unless they're smelling of angel, I'm not seeing much of a connection.
Do we see that divisiveness?
No,
The humour?
no. I'm seeing blazers.
So tailoring?
Seeing a lot of shame.
I think he's focusing on the whole architectural thing, but I don't think that's
Yeah.
enough to kind of...
So I have the show notes here. Do you want me to read them? Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit here at the end. So controlled volume, counter this delicate armour. So the idea of armour, I think, is interesting. That's something that goes back to Terry Mugler from the 90s and 80s. From puffed drawstring shells to breezy scarf blazers, slashed column and dropped ruffle skirts. Trousers lift and shape in panelled crepe, tailored wool and new zipped spiral denim. It's interesting to work with denim. In a softer play of asymmetric drape, placed ombre prints in shirt jersey and satin separates resolve the collection's
Visage, isn't it?
blocked colour theory. Okay, so
Who was that visage? If you go up with
Yes,
it,
let's
Match
have
brow. She's fabulous. Is it? It's not Canberra Father. Am I making
it is
that up?
Canberra.
It is.
Yes,
Oh,
I
it is.
thought it was,
absolutely,
yeah.
yes.
Really
Looking
stunning.
good.
So good.
See, that's probably the best part about the show, isn't it? Her.
And she's a blip in the casting. The rest of the casting is just like, and they've got like the one tokenistic plus-size gal. Like,
Yeah, it's interesting to choose Canberra Fowler, who has done so much now. She has sort of worked with various galleries again. I think Emmeline in London, hasn't she? She was also part of, I remember the show at sort of the Helmut Lang show. She was part of that in that image. So it's interesting to connect her.
the last dress that Bella Hadid's wearing,
Yes.
it's very reminiscent of, pardon the name, I've forgotten her name, the legendary pattern cutter that recently passed away.
Yes.
It's quite that. Is he just like hopping on a trend and is like, oh, she's gone, so let me whip it up. It reminded me of a lot of that, the poofing.
Can we say, is that denim, you think? So the show notes talked about denim.
Is it? Sort of like some kind of taffeta.
I don't think it's
So
denim.
maybe not this
I
one.
was hoping for taffeta.
What do we think about the beauty looks in the show? That's also something that was so important to Terry Mugler.
It was so meticulous before.
You mean like, for example, now,
Yeah.
I guess he thinks he's probably, I don't know, being really interesting by doing quite a sharp, slanted brow as like a reference to
He is an
the
architect.
old Mugler and the
Yeah.
beauty in the shows, but it's still very...
It's too minimal, it's not decadent enough.
It's very architect.
Good with rimless
Very
glasses.
architect.
Like, if that's the most interesting makeup that he wants to...
I think maybe wants to focus more on, like, on the actual clothes, but the clothes aren't that like grandiose either. So I guess it's just the new age Mugler.
And to think, when you have the opportunity like that, you've got a house like Mugler and you've got these incredible models, and you think, you know what, slick the hair back and draw a line on the brow, done. A glossier, dewy cheek. Like, what? You could do so many amazing things.
So we don't have a live feed from the show, but we have Instagram stories, so we can see it in motion, just to bring it to life.
It's nice that the cheeks are out.
Yeah, I like that.
I guess it's just like a modern interpretation of Mugler, because fashion in general has obviously become so much more tame since that era. So nothing's ever really going to live up to that anymore. So this is just, I guess, the new take on it, trying to stick to the, you know, some of the codes. But I just think there's no correlation to how it was and how it is now.
We can't be mad at him for evolving, I guess.
It does seem very much like a compromise between, you know, this is something I think I empathise with designers that have to reckon with the archive and actually use it either sparingly and say how much of the brand DNA is going to, you know, be apparent in this next generation. I just reflect a little bit on how, you know, how difficult it is to wear Mugler, and obviously I think maybe those who, models or people who remember wearing Mugler in the 90s might think differently. But I've worked a lot in vintage, and at this time around 2010, when Lady Gaga wore Mugler in the telephone video, there was a huge interest in, you know, anything Mugler that came through. I worked in a resale shop. And I have to say a lot of it is on the hanger is quite dowdy and not those catwalk pieces and really difficult to wear. And I saw so many you know, gorgeous creatures come in and try these things on, and they didn't look good. And a lot of that had to do with how big and how structural the shoulder pads were and how much leather there was. And actually, if you weren't a supermodel, it was very hard to pull off. So I slightly wonder if part of what Casey's, you know, task is to strike the balance between how would we like to feel that we're wearing Mugler, but it's not so Mugler.
And it reminds me a little bit of what we've just seen about the Formichetti interpretation, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also one interesting thing is, whilst the Mugler brand is still going on, you've also got the actual Mugler who's still designing stuff. So I feel like people are going to compare it anyway. And when you look at something, you know, like we said, what Kim Kardashian was wearing, and even, like the Vogue Arabia shoot that she did, and you compare that to what the brand is actually doing, it's just two different worlds still. And the fact that he's still designing means that there's going to be that comparison.
That is a challenge, I would say. And that's something that the house Terry Mugler has to respond to, I think. And also, of course, Mugler works now under a new name. When he went into retirement, he's now Manfred. And we've had the exhibition in Montreal, which was an amazing showcase of his legacy and his work, which I think sort of pushed him back into the public eye and consciousness. So that, I think, possibly, can also support the brand now and can make it stronger, even if they are competing in some way. You know, that can be beneficial.
It's like, I obviously love Mugler, and now that the fact he's having a comeback, I hadn't checked out the new Mugler in so long, but I thought, let me see what's going on, let me see what's cooking. But I'm sure there are lots of people that follow Kim Kardashian that maybe think that the new Mugler is the same Mugler. Do they have any clue?
That it's not Mugler, but it's Manfred.
They've probably never heard of it. Like, if they're like millennials, they probably really...
Whatever Google comes up with.
Exactly, perfume.
I did read a blog recently that said when Cardi B was wearing Mugler that it was a designer that nobody but Beyonce had ever heard of. And I just thought this actually shows how there is a generation of people who've actually only seen Mugler from celebrity catwalks and celebrity red carpets. And the fashion memory is going to come back in a different way.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. And then the exhibition will tour as well.
Exactly.
I haven't seen it. I've not been able to go to Montreal, but it will come to Europe and then travel.
Can I see Beyonce in the Mugler?
Yes.
Can I see?
We have an image of that.
What was that, 2009?
That was definitely before Kim wore.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's usually that way.
Oh, it was a Harley Davidson one.
Yeah.
The one that Cindy Crawford wore.
Yes.
But back then you didn't have Instagram or anything, so it wasn't so kind of easy to spread the Mugler name as it is now when a celebrity is wearing it. So then, like, you know, her fans would probably be what, like 16-year-old girls and things like that. Do you think they'd really have the interest in looking at that and saying, oh, let me find out who that, you know, who that design belongs to, and then becoming a fan of the brand?
I think, but we can give, you know, fashion fans credit as well. They might do, you know, their fashion is interesting to people and it is accessible and you can find out. I mean, these are like these designers, and Terry Mugler, I think, was one of the first. He was like a rock star of his time, wasn't he, himself? Because he was the designer in control of every element of the brand. But also in itself, you know, this enigma that is, and these are really big boots to fill. But even if it lacks the humour and it's sort of more tasteful and streamlined, it still has a really powerful statement.
Yeah.
I do like that Bella Hadid look.
Yeah.
I think like there's some things you can pick out that are really nice. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're Mugler, but I think, you know, the one on the left with Bella. If I saw a woman walking along the street in that, I would obviously think like...
But if you were calling in, would you call in any of that?
Huh?
If you were calling stuff in?
No.
I'd maybe
I wouldn't call any of it in because there's better stuff that I could work with, because I like theatricality and stuff in my work, I wouldn't go to the new Mugler to get
So in your work as a stylist, there wouldn't be anything that you would rip apart and take?
Depends on the brief, obviously. I mean, as I said,
course.
the Bella Hadid look, it's nice because it's sexy and it's strong, and, you know.
That's the thing with this sort of collection. If you're like doing a shoot, and if you have to look at it and be, oh, I have to tear this apart to make it work, that's when I'm like, you're not making a look, you're not putting out an image that anyone really wants to work with. Like, people like Saint Laurent, like right now, like, they're putting out stuff, you're like, I just want to shoot the whole thing like that, like that's perfect. This, I'm like, oh, we could maybe squeeze those leggings in somewhere if you need to get the credit in, like, I'm just bored of it.
What would you pick out then? Like, you had a brief, like what brief would fit this for you? What would you use it for?
Boring woman. No, I'm joking.
In the office, like.
It's interesting you say the boardroom, because I was reading the last season's reviews and notes, and in which case he had said that the old Mugler was a woman dressing powerful so that she could reckon with men and she could, you know, hold her place, and actually that the new Mugler is the person who's dressing this way for themselves. And obviously this is a very now spin on things, but I'm wondering, stylists, models, do you think that is just a bit of lip service to current events about women's empowerment, or do you think that this really represents someone who's dressing for themselves, not so much as armour to face the world?
Didn't he reference it as armour though in the show notes? I think it's just lip service. I don't think anyone's wearing that crop.
Isn't there also, there's such a kind of interest at the moment in this idea that nowadays women, in order to feel powerful and strong, they don't have to necessarily look sexy or show a lot of skin, but there's still the argument that, you know, a lot of brands are doing that sexy look and women are buying it and women are feeling strong and powerful, and it's not kind of misogynistic or anything. So this kind of, I guess the new Mugler isn't as raunchy, but it'd be interesting to know if it's still selling to women that want to feel, you know, strong and sexy and powerful.
I think with the old Mugler, we're talking about hypersexualization, isn't it? And sort of this complete, and because it comes back to the corset as well, and the joy of tight lacing and of putting your bodysuit through certain things to, you know, to become this hypersexualized object, and that is, you know, empowering. And but there's always, and these are contested ideas, and there's not one way of putting a feminist spin on fashion. You know, there are lots of different ways of thinking about how women can be empowered through clothes. But it is the return and the celebration of the body and what we perceive as sort of something that is ultra feminine, whatever that might be. And that's not really tied to any gender, but it's just about, you know, to have this sort of celebration of, you know, femininity in some way, and then linking that with tailoring. But when you say the office worker, that sort of draws me to the suit.
Power suit.
Yeah, the power suit, and that, apart from an 80s reference, I think that is quite a tired connection. And I don't find that particularly, so I don't really see that as a feminist statement. I don't know what you guys think.
It's a lazy one.
I don't really think you can like put any woman in a box to tell any other person what makes them feel sexy or empowered.
Yeah.
The 90s, like the more revealing outfits with the corsets to now all the power suits. It really is dependent on the woman, how she feels. You can't really say a woman now feels more sexy or more empowered because they're more modest in a way. So it's all situational to a particular woman.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
Because I'd feel sexy in a corset and wearing nothing underneath, but also I'd feel empowered in a power suit. So it's really, can't really be confined.
Those prints.
I'm missing to me, I don't know what this idea of coming back to this idea of humor in fashion and that is lost in fashion, this idea of campness I don't see here at all. And again, of course, we had that connection with that exhibition, but I think it is also very much a part of sort of the Mugler legacy.
Yeah. It does seem like it's trying to distance itself from camp. And in a way to say, well, there's a Mugler on the in the perfume, and there's a Mugler in the archive, and then there's something other that maybe is not a balance yet.
I mean, actually, if you think about it though, about designers that have either left their brand or died, and then someone else has taken over, how many can we actually look at now and say, oh, that's definitely that? Like, Dior, for example. You would never look at Dior and say, oh, that's Dior.
Yes. That's a really good point.
There's so many, so...
This obviously has such a much longer legacy, so that it gives it time to evolve. This is so rapid. It was like Manfred was there doing glamour, then a couple changeovers, and now we're doing sloppy power suits. Like, he's still alive. Can we not have some, some respect?
What do you feel about McQueen and stuff? Do you feel like it's the same thing?
I feel like it's the same thing. Like,
Savage Beauty.
No one could ever really live up to McQueen, who was like a genius. And I mean,
I just think it's wild that he says he references the codes of the house to design for this. I just don't see it. To then distance so far. But we're still the codes of the house, but we are distancing ourselves and we're only doing sexy little dresses now.
I don't even think those are attractive, though.
Boo-hoo.
So is that what people want?
Yeah, sorry, Nicola.
Is that what people want, I'm wondering, these days? Because, different eras comes with different codes. So you can't have in 2019 what you had 20 years ago. And I'm wondering if that's also because of the public has changed. So in a way, I think the influence that the internet has had in our lives, and that applies to, I think, a lot of fields, has sort of democratized and equalized things. So it makes me wonder if maybe this is just what would be more acceptable for people to, or comfortable for people to wear.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I'm always thinking, why has fashion become so much more tame? And really, I don't think it's the fault of the designers. It's probably more the fault of the consumers. But then the consumers are probably taming down their wardrobes for some other factor, such as, we had a recession, people aren't willing to spend so much on statement pieces for fear of them getting bored of it, and would rather go for more, normal pieces that you could wear and they have much more longevity. There's loads of reasons as to why brands in general, based on how they used to be, have become way more tame. So I guess that's an interesting topic as well.
Or also gender as well. So you were talking earlier about these shapes, and I think that actually in perfumery we see that as well, that women are starting to use different type of scents that the ones that they were choosing, they would have chosen 20, 30 years ago. So there is, it's quite interesting at the moment, there is a rise in interest in women about men's perfumes.
I'm wearing women's right now.
Which kind of goes back to what you were talking about in terms of how this design is a little bit more masculine than before.
And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Angel and Amen are quite similar because I've also picked up the men's and say, well, it smells very much
Angel
like and Amen. So
yes,
yeah.
of course, it was a masculine take. That's the one on the success of Angel.
I feel like
you see, Angel itself is a perfume that was perfume born in that specific era.
You know Miss Bonnet.
I've been wearing it, I have to say, and I'm very excited that you're here because I wanted to say this and get your take on it. So I never wore any perfume when I was a teenager, and then in around 2001 I worked with someone in a costume shop who said to me, wear this perfume, and he was a boy and he wore it and he said, it smells like church and sex at the same time. And I think that won me over. And even though I've strayed possibly into other similar scents, I always come back. And I wonder if it's just my nostalgia or if it's, you know, if there was really truth and maybe something about the paradox of good girl, bad girl, food and incense.
Well, that is what actually he wanted to convey with this perfume, because he wanted to create this image of a strong, bold woman leaving an impression. He was saying, I remember this quote where he was saying, to wear fashion is to walk into the limelight. But at the same time, he called it angel. And so there is this duality between being, you know, a very strong woman, but with sweetness, softness behind it. In fact, the fragrance itself is incredibly powerful. It's what we describe as a woody oriental. So it has very, very strong notes, but at the same time it has this beautiful smell that is so much reminiscent of childhood. So these tasty notes have that, convey that sense of innocence. So I see where that comment was coming from. But that's what he wanted to actually to express at the time.
I mean, this idea of nostalgia that you mentioned, Jenna, I think is also an interesting one. And looking at the collection now, it doesn't look nostalgic, and that would be a huge mistake, I think, to sort of have the references that, you know, link to the original or to sort of this idea of glamour in too much of an obvious way. And yes, Angel is, and perfumes often are, you know, they take us back to a time when we started wearing them, or sort of memories, and this idea of fashion and memory is also such a huge and important topic here to keep in mind. But
this isn't nostalgia, but I don't even think it's modern. Like minimalism is so 2010.
Yeah, we've not moved on from anything.
I don't know. I don't look at it and think, wow, it's really modern.
Okay, yeah, but it's not nostalgic. But yes.
Yeah, you could have told me this was from 2010. I'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really tough. We're really tough.
Yeah,
Casey today.
It's because we love MUGLER.
Yeah.
Especially him as a person.
It must be
as
very
well.
challenging, huh? Also,
is
I'm thinking also
challenging.
the perfumery side of it.
Yes.
Because when you have an icon like MUGLER, like Angel, you need it, of course.
If you were advising the house, what do you think they should do with a new scent?
Oh, well, that's a very big question which can be discussed separately.
Modern. Love that.
MUGLER ever have plus size models on the runway in the 90s? I'm guessing highly unlikely.
It could, well,
Ivana
it
Trump
could
modelled
be.
for
Ivana Trump,
MUGLER.
she was one of his biggest clients. She bought all the dresses in all the colors. So Ivana came to Paris, and I thought also he had a diverse cast for sure. Then there was a lot of dance, and so voguing was part of the runway.
His casting was always interesting. It wasn't just, you know.
Yes, his casting was always groundbreaking and pushing at
With
what
Rossi
was...
Palmer and opening the cave.
Yes.
So good. And always on a raised catwalk. Maybe he should do this awful new modern stuff and just put it on a raised catwalk and everyone find it funny.
Yeah.
Well, I just wonder whether they're simply listening to the public a bit more, trying to adapt to current wishes. Because recently they launched also a range of more couture perfumes.
Right.
Which is what actually people are very interested in at the moment.
Yes.
So this,
So
concept of personalized, yes, authenticity, kind of more unique type of perfumes, which again wouldn't have worked in 1992 when Angel came up.
I mean, another brave decision that Terry Mugler took at that time was that The Angel flacon was a refill. So you didn't have to buy a new one. You could go back and get it refilled at a much lower cost. Again, sort of that was very forward thinking at that time, and I guess that they still do that at the house.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So those kinds of decisions might be, interesting to think about more. But I don't know. I get a sense we're quite sort of cold.
Collection's cold.
The collection's cold, the staging's cold, it's an ice white.
Yeah, exactly, look at the staging as well.
The models look cold.
I think the stage is a big part of it, actually.
Yes, I know.
There's not much set design happening.
We don't know what the music was.
It's very clinical.
It's so clinical. And you've got models like Lily McMenemy, who's such a sensation.
And
she's
such a personality.
Just have a walk up and down.
Yeah.
She's such a personality, and then she's just up and down.
And there are models that are working now that do have personality that could have
Lily
easily...
is one of those.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
could
She
have
makes
easily.
every
Manfred
walk
had Lily McMenemy and had her do what she does. Literally be incredible.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
But then he's probably just said to her, okay, just walk with a blank expression.
But she does
I look like
beautifully,
you're
of
bored.
course.
Do you feel like your views would change about the actual clothing if the set was actually dramatic like it used to be? I think this is really making it fall a bit more...
I still think the clothes are the clothes.
Yeah, clothes are the clothes, but I guess...
I mean, the set just adds to it, but at the end of the day, when you're looking at the clothes, they still are not.
Okay.
Just unacceptable,
Yeah.
really.
Well, so some final words?
Can we talk about Mugler as a person?
Yes, of course.
Just how stunning he is at
He's
the moment.
incredible, yeah.
Could we, Manfred?
Yeah, Manfred.
Yes.
A mystery.
Just, he's really excelling at the moment.
He is.
Love the visage. He's great. What does he do? Like, was he
just
floating around
living.
Paris, just living his life?
Just living, just raving and living.
And just chatting with
should
Kim on the
be.
phone.
He designs stage costumes.
When was that?
So he's working
That was
still.
for Interview magazine.
I'm shook.
And he goes to the gym.
You can definitely see he goes to the gym.
And the surgeon.
Really lovely. This is what I expect to see from a brand,
Yes.
A figurehead, like a Marc Jacobs, embody
Just
the brand.
a visage that embodies the brand. When you look at that, that's a face of excess and glamour and a great life.
Yes, absolutely.
And he's got the angel ring, look.
Oh. Anyway, an absolute icon anyway.
Yes, an absolute icon. And I can't wait to see the exhibition when it comes to Europe, wherever it is. And that, he was so involved. Again,
Yes, he was.
everything that he touches, he's very involved with, which I think is amazing. So, yeah, I think that's a really nice way of closing it. So we are still more interested in Manfred.
Come back, Manfred.
Manfred, yeah.
Okay, well...
Maybe a new perfume from him.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That'd be amazing. It's been a while, hasn't it? Since Alien. Was that like 5 years ago?
Does he
It's
own the
Alien came
perfume,
out.
or is it still owned by the house?
It will be owned by
By
Clarence.
Clarence.
Yeah.
Clarence.
Clarence,
I had no idea.
bought Mugler in the late 90s.
He needs to do a solo perfume. This is a shout out to Manfred to bring out a perfume on his own.
Eau de Moi or something, very him.
I would be
Well,
very
hopefully
interested.
he's watching. Hopefully he's watching. I think he'll be really pleased to hear what you had to say about him. So that's
I hope
nice.
he's watching.
And no, I just want to thank you all. So thank you for coming and sort of being honest and critical. That's what these panels are about. So I thought that was amazing. And then, thank you for watching. So for more extensive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to visit SHOWstudio.com as well. And you can find us on YouTube. And comment on the panels and maybe subscribe as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.